Hi everyone, welcome to the session. So today we are doing this reading comprehension analysis of the RC that was shared in the Telegram community. Now let us, without wasting any time, directly jump to the analysis. So I hope you can see the fonts clearly, and if you are not able to see the fonts clearly, you can always go and have a look at the PDF that is given in the community. But having said that, let's delve into the explanation. So before I start full-fledged, there are a few pointers that I want to say. First thing is that you can ramp up the video to 1.5x speed. That will enhance your viewing experience. Number two is that about this RC, I think this was fairly doable RC. This was not really very difficult in that sense. It was quite readable. There were not too many jargons. This is a fairly easy, so moderate RC, you can say. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So let me read out the RC and then we will solve the uh, answers. That ways we'll also be able to understand if there is any you know internal main ideas hidden or some sort of a you know arguments that can be drawn out. So let's read. Pocahontas was the favorite daughter of Powhatan, the formidable ruler of more than 30 Algonquin speaking tribes in and around the area that the early English settlers would claim as Jamestown, Virginia. Years later, after no one was able to dispute the fact, John Smith wrote about how she, the beautiful daughter of an influential native leader, rescued him, an English adventurer, from being executed by her father. Okay, so initial impressions, fairly readable. First para, fairly readable. The only argument that is presented is an introduction to Pocahontas, also through the lens of somebody, some John Smith fellow who is also in a positive tone speaking about this girl Pocahontas. Now let's read ahead. This narrative of Pocahontas turning her back on her people and allying with the English, thereby finding common ground between the two cultures, has endured for centuries. This is going to be an important line. Okay. However, in actuality, Pocahontas's life was much different from how Smith or mainstream culture tells it. It is even disputed whether or not Pocahontas, age 11 or 12, even rescued the mercantile soldier and explorer at all, as Smith might have misinterpreted what was a ritual ceremony or even just lifted the tale from some popular Scottish ballad. So this paragraph number 2, basically talks about that, it might as well be not this much of a, the praise of Pocahontas might not be the case. All right, let's read ahead. Now, 400 years after her death, the story of the real Pocahontas is finally accurately explored through a new documentary, Pocahontas Beyond the Myth. Okay, so we are talking about some sort of a documentary over here. Authors, historian, curators, and representatives from the Pamunkey tribe of Virginia, the descendants of Pocahontas, offer expert testimony to a point to paint a picture of the spunky, cartwheeling Pocahontas who grew up to be clever and brave young woman serving as a translator, ambassador, and a leader in her own right in the face of European power. So this is basically now digging deep into the story of Pocahontas without taking too much, historical data. So this is almost like they are excavating truth about this girl Pocahontas. Now there's a name given. Whenever there's a name, I'm very, cautious because arguments are drawn around names. Camilla Townsend, author of the authoritative Pocahontas and the Powhatan Dilemma and a history professor at Rutgers University, who is featured in Beyond the Myth, talks about why the story of Pocahontas has been so distorted. Okay. So she basically thinks that the story is distorted, and why her true legacy is vital to understand today. Now there is a quotation mark that means we are going to talk in Second person. I was a professor of Native American history for many years. I was working on a project comparing early relations between colonizers and Indians in Spanish. Indians, please understand, we're not talking about the Indians. They are talking about the Red Indians or the Native Americans. In the Spanish America and English America, when they arrived, I thought I would be able to turn to other people's work on Pocahontas and John Smith and John Rolfe. Okay, so she thought something. There are indeed hundreds of books over many years that have been written about her. Nevertheless, I tried to look into it. I found that most of them were full of hogwash. This is going to be an important point. She thinks that most of the work or the books that is in and around Pocahontas is hogwash. To put it gently, all of that is bullshit. Many of them had been written by people who were not historians. Others were historians, but they were people who specialized in other matters and were taking it for granted that if something had been repeated several times in other people's work, it must have been true. When I went back and looked at the actual surviving document from that period, I learned that much of what has been repeated about her was not true at all. So her findings was that, this is most of what was written about her was not true at all. The story that Pocahontas was head over heels in love with John Smith has lasted for many generations. Okay, so this was something that just John Smith fellow also told, and the love story head over heel in love with John Smith that has lasted for many generations. This fellow himself mentioned in the colonial period, as you say, then it died. So this love story died for some time and was born again after the revolution in the early 1800s when we were looking for nationalist stories. Okay. I think the reason it has been so famous, not among Native American, please understand, I'm highlighting the important points. This story, the love story or whatever, Pocahontas is, head over heels in love with the English American, is n- has been s- has not been so much famous among the Native Americans, but among the people of the dominant culture, basically the white Americans, not the Indians, not the red Indians. And that is because that is a way is that it is very flattering to us. Basically, this is flattering to the English, the people, right? The colonizers. Now, please understand that there's a lot of gyanbazi, or there's a lot of out of the scope talk that I can do, but let's not delve into it. Simply, let's jump into the questions. The first question says, according to the passage, all of the following are true about Pocahontas, except. Now, hopefully, we don't have to go back to the passage. Let's read. Please understand, we are supposed to find out a statement which is not true, because all are true and we are supposed to find the except statement. Okay, so something which is not true. Pocahontas belonged to Pamunkey lineage of Virginia. This is already written, so this is true. So goes out. John Smith's story of Pocahontas is mostly fictional. We'll keep that. Pocahontas was a very brave girl who resisted European colonizers. No, definitely not. She did not resisted. Most of the documented accounts of Pocahontas was untrue. This is also true. This is, something that the author, basically not the author, but the lady Camilla Townsend, discovers that most of that is hogwash or something of that sort, right? So, with that being said, we come to option number two being the answer. The purpose of the documentary Pocahontas Beyond the Myth is, what is the purpose? Now, obviously, we are aware of what the purpose is. Let's read through the options to see if we can get an answer. To explore the truth of why Pocahontas turned her back on her people and allied with the English. She did turn her back on her people, but did she allied with the English? I don't think so, and that is definitely not the reason purpose of the documentary Pocahontas Beyond the Myth. Okay, so this may be true, may not be true. Again, we don't know, but one thing for sure, we can say that this is not the purpose why the documentary is created. The documentary to dispel the myth that surround the narrative of Pocahontas, which have endured for centuries. Could be, I'll keep it for the time. To highlight the common ground between Native Indians and European culture. Definitely not. To explore the history of Algonquin speaking tribe in what British named as, definitely not. This is also not. This is not to explore. The documentary was to, you know, uh, was designed to dispel the myths around, that surround the narrative of Pocahontas, okay, which has endured for centuries. Okay, so that is one of the reasons why it was designed. Now, which of the following statements, if true, weakens the claim of Camilla Townsend? Now, guys, at this point in time, let's go and try and understand. Although we are pretty much aware of what Camilla Townsend as a person has an argument, because we have, this is a very fairly short RC, so the argument is just in your face right there. Argument is basically, she is startled that most of the document that there was are full of hogwash. Hogwash basically means bullshit. People were not qualified enough to write, and the ones that were qualified also wrote it just out of, you know some, it was as if they're writing literature. Okay, so there was no documented proofs, there were no facts. So that is the main idea or the argument of Camilla Townsend. See, she is a important character. So now that we understand more or less, let's read the options. I think this is not going to be very difficult. Those who wrote about Pocahontas were storytellers least concerned with fact checking. This is actually a true thing. So, if this were true, this would not weaken the claim of Camilla Townsend. The claim of Camilla Townsend is that most of the literature, even the one written by John Smith, is bullshit. Okay, hogwash, the kind of word I will not be using in an actual test. I'll keep my own colloquial terms in my head. That helps me. Goes out. Many historians did not do adequate research and affected facts written by others as true. This is also given, so goes out. Okay, written, if true does not, weakens the claim. Actually, option number one and two, basically, if they were true, they will support the claim. Okay, or strengthen the claim of Camilla Townsend. From many books that's been written on her, one can't set apart those that are authentic. That is also true. And if this is, even if this is true, this does not really weakens the claim. So this also goes out. Some of the documents surviving from Pocahontas's time corroborate John Smith's version. Now, this is a very, this option, with this word corroborate, if you know this meaning, this basically, corroborate means that the claim is true, or, you can say strengthens the claim of John Smith's version. If this were true, if John Smith, whatever he was saying, whatever literature he was writing down, if that were true, that will definitely weaken the claim of Camilla Townsend. So this is going to be the answer. Now let's look into this question. According to Camilla Townsend, the enduring interest in the story of Pocahontas is mainly because, now we have to understand, we'll go all the way in the last paragraph. Please read this line, that, the girl was head over heels in love with John Smith. Something love story was there, then it died and it born again after the revolution of 1800s. Okay, you can quickly read it. When we were looking for nationalist stories, I think the reason it has been so famous, not among the Native American but among the people of dominant culture, is that it is very flattering to us. Basically, the English people took it in a flattering tone. So that is the main idea. It is marketed as an enduring love story that survived against all odds. Definitely not. It is a true story of Pocahontas' powerful life from a colonial era. Definitely not. It is the story portrayed by the colonizers and their actions. The story portrayed the colonizers and their actions in favorable light. This is exactly what is written in the last line. That is when, you know, it is very flattering to us. Okay, so that is the answer. If But we'll read the last option any which ways. The last option says, it is true tale of a Native American girl persecuted by her people when she allied with the colonizer. Was she persecuted by her own people? Even if that is true, that is out of context for our purpose, so we will not talk about that. Okay, let's look into the last question. So this is going to be the last question, and this I thought was the most difficult question. The tone of the passages. The options given are historical, descriptive, speculative, nostalgic. It is definitely not nostalgic. The author is not feeling I'm so happy, and speaking about it, gives me goosebumps and butterflies in my belly. So that is a sense of nostalgia. Speculative is a very strong proponent. When I was also reading this, I thought maybe it can be speculative. So this basically becomes one of those question which is very difficult. Actually, this is in its entirety. If you see, there is no historical documentation given. It is just a description of a lot, okay, about the girl. We are talking about everything that relates to Pocahontas, her, her tribe, maybe where she came from, and her, a lot of narrative is given towards Pocahontas, her family, and everything, the love story. So in that sense, since it is very descriptive in nature, the author is describing things in a very decent way. The only time the speculative thing comes into the picture is when Camilla Townsend, is presenting her argument. So in the limelight of Camilla Townsend, maybe the argument is speculative, but that is not speculative for the passage. So it is not speculative. The speculation only comes from Camilla Townsend. She is not the author of this passage. The author is using descriptive tone for the passage. So it is definitely not speculative. If you have any query, if you have any questions, you can get in touch with us. You can comment it down. We are always there for your help. So that is all from my side. Thank you. This is me, Somajit Goswami, signing out.